So I'm sure you know how to click on icons, type into word processors, and most likely even the significance of WASD in gaming. You also probably know some of the terms thrown around all the time, such as RAM, HDD, SSD, CPU, and GPU. But do you know what the significance of each of those things are? If you do, this video is probably not for you. If you don't, however, then stick around. We'll begin with talking about how computers think. Unlike you and I, computers are extremely simple thinkers. They operate on nothing more than ones and zeros. That's it, just ons and offs. How are ones and zeros able to do math, send emails, display photos, and even play massive multiplayer online games? We will never know. Just accept that they do. These actions are held in the central processing unit, or CPU. The CPU is the most important part of the computer. If you don't have one, then good luck trying to see if it'll run Crysis. The speed of the processor is the key to the complex things you see on your screen. 2.4 gigahertz is a common example of processor speed. The higher the number, the better. That's all you need to know. The number of cores also affects performance. A core is basically a full CPU within the CPU. You know what, just accept the paradox and live with the idea of a black hole running your computer. It's close enough to the truth. This brings us to cache. CPUs are very expensive. Just kidding, we're not talking about that kind of cache. We're talking about the little block of memory that holds very important and often used data. Isn't that called RAM? No. The cache is a much better chunk of memory, where RAM is just a worse version of memory. Now continuing with the subject of RAM, or random access memory. RAM is the middleman. It's faster than your main storage drive and slower than cache. The number next to the GB on the packaging of RAM is how much junk you can fit in it. Obviously, the bigger the better. The CPU stores larger things in the RAM that wouldn't fit in the cache, such as your operating system, because why not? There are two types of RAM. Dynamic RAM, or DRAM, is the most common, cheapest, and largest form of RAM. In fact, it is the added benefit of being the only RAM you can usually find. The other kind of RAM isn't worth mentioning because of its lack of availability, but it's a little faster. Moving on to storage drives. These massive blocks of memory store all of the data on your computer and can be powered off without losing it. There are three main types. Hard disk drives, or HDDs, contain a platter that spins around and a little read-write head that moves across the surface, much like an old record player. Wait, what is a record player again? Oh, I think that's starting to become an outdated reference. Anyway, HDDs are the cheapest, largest, and most common form of storage drive. If you are trying to find an HDD with less than 500 gigabytes, then don't bother. Next is solid-state drives, or SSDs.
SSDs don't have any moving parts, which makes them extremely quick when writing and reading from the drive.
They tend to be way faster and quieter than HDDs, but are smaller and way more expensive. If you are trying to find an SSD with more than 500 gigabytes, then don't bother. A good rule of thumb is if you plan to do document-related work and the occasional game of solitaire, get a small SSD. If you plan to do anything else, get a small SSD for the operating system and programs, then a massive HDD for everything else. Good luck trying to get the BIOS configured correctly. Don't worry, you don't need to know what the BIOS is. Finally, there are hybrid drives, which are basically half SSD and half HDD. Most computers treat the two sections differently, so what's the point? The final component that needs talking about is the graphics card. The graphics card is usually a whole little computer specifically designed for crunching graphical data. It contains a CPU for graphics, referred to as the graphics processing unit, or GPU. There is also a chunk of special high-speed RAM, commonly called video RAM, or VRAM, for holding graphics-related things. Well, looks like we're about out of time here. I hope that you learned something new here, and if you didn't, I could care less. I'm your host, Nicholas Bradham, and have a good day.